All right. So, I mean, the panel was quite, very quick, so we didn't have the time to hear everyone and to answer any of your questions. But this is, I think, it's a good opportunity for all of us to look into what we mean by the ecosystem. And I'll be happy to share with you some examples about what we are doing in other countries, especially in Georgia, or even in other countries, because I had worked in Thailand and also in Ethiopia before. So the term inclusive, sustainable entrepreneurship ecosystems, they're been repetitively used now in many academic or even UN kind of agencies, but there's still not a clear understanding of what we mean sometimes by inclusive or sustainable entrepreneurship. And this is what we're also trying to illustrate in this expert session. Okay, let's first meet a smaller group. That's perfect, so we can actually get to know each other even better. I want to ask a few questions, and please can you raise your hands if any of you relate to this. How many people here in this room have experienced starting a business? Okay, we've got 3 people, 4, 5. Okay, all right, so we have some entrepreneurs in this room. That's good. Another question is, how many of you promote entrepreneurship? Or you do work, whether, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, good. So that's a very good number of people that promote. How many of you who actually have an experience in developing an entrepreneurship strategy, or you've been in an advisory role of to design an entrepreneurship ecosystem? 1. Okay, that's fine. Okay, it's good. How many people here have done any research on entrepreneurship, trying to look at different 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. So we don't have those like people that work with the government mostly, because the one before was related to the government. Now, what about how many people that are actually working in implementing entrepreneurship programs? You mentioned that earlier. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. So that's it tells us a lot about this room, that we do have a lot of people who are actually very much involved in entrepreneurship by addressing those questions. The only area that we don't have here much is the area on entrepreneurship strategies, of how we can mobilize entrepreneurship on a national level, in a way. Now, why am I addressing those questions is, number one, is that I wanted to see that entrepreneurship, that we also sometimes use it as a discipline by itself, okay, as from one sphere, just someone starting a business. But it actually has a lot of different ways of how it can be achieved by itself. So you could be one of the policymakers that drive the entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurial and job creations, or you could be one of those practitioners who are more involved in the designing of entrepreneurship projects and programs. Now, some of you here might have a definition or some kind of an understanding of what an entrepreneurship is. Can anybody contribute to that? Yes?
Entrepreneurship is a French word which means to start your own business, but normally people would characterize it by high risk, high profit, sort of high growth, high risk sort of business.
Okay, that's good. Anyone would like to add to this? Yes?
For me, entrepreneurship is having an entrepreneurial mindset or characteristic of entrepreneur in order to seek and exploit an opportunity and convert it to a valuable product or service that in return get back to you with money. So for me, entrepreneurship is about seeking, exploring, and exploiting opportunities.
Perfect. Okay. Please.
I would add that entrepreneurship creates jobs for others and not just for yourself. And just separate it out from the point you made today about freelancing versus entrepreneurship.
That's a very good point, actually, because we always are stuck with this when it comes to statistics. A lot of people, we ask them questions that's mostly in labor force surveys or school to work transition surveys, where we address those questions to people, like, what do you do? And then they tell us, well, I'm a self-employed, I'm a freelancer. And then the only way that makes us distinction between whether those are entrepreneurs or self-employed is to see whether they're capable of creating jobs. They're capable of hiring others. That's the point. So in many cases, what I would like to kind of like make an understanding is that we claim all the jobs are created as entrepreneurial, but in reality they're not. When we actually tell someone to open a small shop that himself or herself are operating this shop, and without creating any job or having any kind of risk in terms of, I mean, not all businesses are actually quite risky, but that's usually, it's not considered as an entrepreneurship. Would you like to contribute to this?
Yeah, for me, my mind is connected also to being innovative solutions or tackling new problems or say all the problems in an innovative way. So, for example, opening a shop, you are not doing something very new or unique. So, I'm not sure if it's right or wrong idea, but in my mind, it's connected to this.
Well, no, it's totally right. That's the point of entrepreneurship. I mean, if you can look at it, if you want to look at entrepreneurship as a mean towards growth, then you cannot accept the definition of opening a shop. That's not eventually what you are aiming to achieve. So yes, would like to add to this.
Norm, I would assume it involves new products, new services, a new business model of some sort, which is different from the existing ones.
Great, yes, it does have a value proposition that it's offering to its stakeholders in a way, and that's based on what the business model is like. Perfect, I think now we all understand what it means. But usually in the reality of the 4 countries that we're focusing on right now, is that most of the entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship activities that we do are limited to a certain scope where there's not much of potential of job creations. And that's why we're still looking at youth unemployment as a threatening indicators to future generations. Now, when it comes to, for those who work on entrepreneurship plans or job creations plans, that's the kind of, they put this plan on paper, and this is from experience. And they tell you, if you invest in a training, if you provide grants, if you invest in some kind of legislative reform, and then all of a sudden, things will go very smoothly. People will start their business, right? Jobs will be created. GDP will go up. That's like the perfect scenario. Growth will be fine. You alleviate poverty. You improve livelihoods and living conditions of people. Things go very smoothly afterwards, right? But then we discover that the reality is quite different from that. Okay, we discovered that our investment somewhere doesn't really lead to job. I mean, we talk about, even in the UN, honestly, work, we call it job creation. But then we find out that we are only raising awareness about business, And it's like we're telling people what business is and what it's like and how we can actually get to know. So what I wanted to start with here to show you that it's actually, it's unusual that we look at it in a very straightforward, or it's a very smooth kind of transitions toward job creation. Now, the definition that I like, although there are a lot of definitions of entrepreneurship ecosystem, is that if you want to design an environment, a conducive environment that would enable job creations, you have to start from the core. Okay? And the core here comes from the individuals. Now, so what I mean by the individuals, we talk about the spirit, right? We talk about the culture, dynamics, and the social norms. We also talk about the aspirations of the people. That's very important because someone has been driven by something to achieve results. So that's a good starting point when we actually look into entrepreneurship. Now, but we realize after that, although yes, it's about individuals, but it contains a lot of other drivers to it as well. Okay? And those are institutions, other actors that we have to work in order for us to succeed. We talked this morning about the market. Do we have a market for our ideas to prosper? Yes, now we talk about Souk.com in Dubai, how it's actually got acquired by Amazon. But, I mean, UAE had a market, had an infrastructure that enabled such businesses to prosper and see the light. So the attitudes, abilities, and aspiration of people to be able to allocate the resources and to take the decision. So the ecosystem by itself is a very self-regulating. It consists of multiple actors, okay, together, and it's the way that the best way to talk about it is to look at the interconnectedness of that ecosystem, and then we'll be able to define how it functions. Now, of course, I looked at some of the researchers, and I'm sure you're all familiar with these kind of difficulties that people face. In the UK, the top 3 reasons of why starting a business is very difficult is, number 1, confidence was actually 50%, for instance. Funding, and then access to talent was 10%, okay? So those are the areas where people were claiming that they're the challenge for us to start a business. In other countries, like for example in Montenegro, they're